This is week 4 of Patrick Lecture 37 on acceptance, right and wrong way, and dignity in humility. First thing I'm going to do is add a little real life example of acceptance. I live in Brooklyn, New York, in a Haitian Caribbean neighborhood. It is summer, it is graduation week, and it's Saturday night, and there are parties. And so if you hear noise in the background, I can't insulate that noise any more than I've tried this evening. A lot of celebration going on. And living in this neighborhood, which is a different culture than I was raised with or have ever been around before, has been an exercise in acceptance. Not my way of expressing my feelings to shout at people walking up and down the streets. New York honking, loud music in cars while you're parked waiting for somebody. There's a lot of stuff that I've had to breathe and work with. And it's actually, for me, pathwork in action. This is how I do my pathwork, by managing my arrogance, frustration, short temper, demand. The list is extremely lengthy. And I get a lot of practice here in Brooklyn, especially in the summer. So once again, if there's a background noise, this is the best I can do today. So that's practicing acceptance. This week, I focused on questions and answers. I did so because questions and answers are a very big deal in the guide lectures. There are, give or take rough numbers, 258 numbered lectures. Of those numbered lectures, a dozen or so, if not 2 dozen, are actually Q&A sessions. And just before the number 100, they stopped numbering the Q&A sessions and started numbering them as Pathwork Lecture 101 QA, which follows Pathwork Lecture 101. So that by the time the guide finished the series, there were 258 numbered lectures and 113 Q&As. So there's 370 odd lectures total. What the Q&As were an opportunity for people to ask questions. And again, I highlighted it for this week because one of the exercises was, what would you ask? Now, in the edited lectures, which are freely available to the public from pathwork.org, they have often edited out a lot of the questions because they're all over the map. They're just, there's no rhyme or reason. Because people have sat with their question, waiting for an opportunity or waiting to be called, perhaps for 6 months. And they don't care what the topic that night was, they've still got a question. So the questions are wide-ranging, and some of them are very personal. Some of them are technical. Some of them are about lectures or more in-depth, and some are about the lecture that evening. So I don't tend to feature Q&As because they range so much. But I did this time because I found that some of the Q&As attached to this lecture were of interest in the topic of acceptance. They were also important in terms of fleshing out the world that the guide describes. I also thought it was a good opportunity to encourage people to do their own research. I do research all the time. And I have lots of sources. They're listed on my website. There is the original Bratnik Index that was donated by the Dutch Pathwork. It was the original manual index by topic. It's 12, 15 pages. It'll save you from being on the computer, but it only talks about major indexed items. An easy way to look for a topic is to go to an index of lecture names and put in a search word in the PDF or doc, whatever, and find how many lectures have the word men in them. Men and women would fit into that. How many words have this, how many lectures have this word? I very often find that's a shortcut because I'm usually aware that there's a lecture on secrecy, can't remember which one it is, it's in the 200 someplace. So I'll type secret, the origin, not secret, but secret into the search box. And lo and behold, it immediately finds privacy and secrecy, which is in the late 200s. So that's the how to find things by title and to have a manual index. There is a site that was developed by a Belgian pathworker that is called the Pathwork Word Search. And you can go alphabetically, find a word, and it will give you a sentence or two as context for how that word was used, and also a count on how many times that word appeared in the lectures. I do not know if all the Q&As are included, but it's good enough. I have also learned to search my own computer where I have all these 370 lectures. I figured out how to do a fairly smart search of them. And then as far as the Q&As are concerned, there was a pathworker named Jill Laurie, whose passion was the Q&As. She loved them, and there were so many, and it was so confusing. And she made a multi-year, decade-long project of indexing the Q&As. Her work is online. It's called The Guide Speaks. Link is on my website. She also sells volumes of this, PDFs and Kindles and stuff like that on Amazon. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of tools for looking through the lectures and finding a mention of something that matters to you. And if there wasn't a topic that subject came up in, somebody may have raised their hand, and there's a Q&A on that, which often the guide's response was a page and a half long. He was not stingy with his time. So I recommend highly that you follow your interest. What interests you? I remember one year I was doing a Yom Kippur service for the Pathwork group, and I looked up the word vow. And I hadn't really thought about it before, but the word vow does not appear at all in any Pathwork lecture. And you'd think that just by coincidence or sideways or during a question, it would come up. Not once. I just find it fascinating what words are never used. You can come to your own conclusion on why the guide doesn't talk about vows. So that's about the Q&As. And so I used this opportunity to kind of throw the meetings open and say, what question are you looking at? Not that I should answer it, but that you might want to talk about it, name it, and discuss it. Now, I'll give you an example that I recently came across. And I have another resource for myself, the Pathwork Leadership Circle. I was curious when Ava took her holidays. She would take months off and go back to Europe and ski. She loved to ski. And I wondered how much time she took off, whether it was once or twice a year, because they took a short Christmas break. And they took off the summer. So you can tell from the dates on the lectures. And so I lifted from a PDF form the delivery dates of all the lectures and had the computer compute the difference between them all. And one of the number of days between lectures was over 200 days. And of course, I thought I'd made a formula error. I checked it, went back and forth and checked it. Over 200 days between one lecture and the next. This happens at either 233 or 234. I had known that Ava had had 2 incidents of cancer. A first one that went into remission, and the second one that took her life. And my conclusion was that this 200-day absence was the first one. And so I wrote to the leadership circle saying, would anybody like to talk about this? And lo and behold, a dozen people answered back over a 2-week period of time. saying, we've never actually talked about it. And yes, it was traumatic to have the guide leave for over a year. I can't remember the number of days right now. Let's say it was a year and a half. It was a long time. But my point is this. I found a question and I found a forum to ask it in. And I got some fascinating answers and people appreciated starting to talk about it for the first time since it happened back in the 60s or 70s. And I'm emphasizing this. They don't know the answer yet. We're still researching. We're going to have some forums and questions, but it's in motion. And what I'm saying is, it never occurred to me when I asked the question, they would open up an opportunity for other people that they'd never had before. So I'm a big fan of asking questions. I'm a fan of allowing your imagination and your interest to roam, of having fun with the lectures, and of specializing in what you want to learn right now, rather than feeling bound by, well, what lecture is Jan on? And what is she emphasizing for the month? I don't care what I'm emphasizing for the month. If that's not where your interest is, I invite you to stick to your guns and claim your interest. So that's what I thought I would say about the Q&As. Also, next week, there's a major US holiday weekend, Labor Day. And this was also a time where I had to put a fifth weekend to catch up. And so I decided that besides this Q&A, in my fifth week, I'd play also. And so what I did was I created an exercise and I took some of my, there's a polite word for this, esoteric, unique, weird. My friends have a lot of terms for some of the movies that I have collected and love over the years. And I used those as examples of a Catholic concept, which can be explained in the text, but also could be watched. And I put them in my Google Drive. And I did this to have fun. It's a holiday weekend, to do something different. I did it partly because somebody asked. And when somebody asks, I think that if one person asks, maybe 50 other people would be interested. So let's try this and see if it works. The movies will only be in there for the month of September 2024 in the link. The exercise can be downloaded. And quite honestly, because it's Labor Day weekend, there may not be a week 5 video. So I thought I would mention it and cheat and put these two together. But it's an example of where my personal interests and hobbies are also places where I work with pathwork. I work to understand it. I work to see it in the real world and in ways where I can share with other people because we have a common language. One of the things I love about pictures and movies and books is that it's not fleeting. If I have a conversation with a person and I repeat it to somebody else, I'm repeating it, which means I'm giving them my take on that conversation. What they're missing is the original evidence. But with a film or a book or a video or an article, everybody gets to go to the source material. And I have found it as a teaching tool fascinating to watch the different perceptions that can come out of the same experience. As a matter of fact, those are the films that I really like working with because it allows people to see the variety instead of what's the right answer. All these have a portion of the right answer. So that's the fun I'm having at the end of the summer. Take a look, see if that works for you. Thanks for listening. I strongly advertise Catholic Lecture 37, Acceptance, Right and Wrong Way, and Dignity with Humility, which the guide says to practice acceptance, you need to have dignity. It's not about just laying down and saying yes. It's about deciding to receive what is offered. So thanks for listening. Take care.